Displayed in the public rooms of the 2nd Battalion, the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment, is a painting that portrays the landing at Goldbeach on D-Day by the Hampshire Regiment. There is no film evidence of the Hampshires fighting on D-Day, and their operational diary does not give an hourly account. This may be because their commanding officer was wounded and their second in command killed by a sniper's bullet early in the action. Generally, this omission from the records is regarded as an indication of the torrid time experienced by the men on D-Day. By 1944, the Hampshires were already a battle-seasoned unit, having played a similar role in the North African campaign as well as the assault on Sicily. These conflicts took a heavy toll on the regiment, and this may have influenced planners' choice in using them again to spearhead the D-Day landings, which were expected to inflict heavy losses on the assault troops. At the centre of the 5 designated landing areas for Allied troops on D-Day was Goldbeach, to be taken by the 231st Brigade of the British 50th Infantry Division, which included the Hampshires. According to the intelligence diary for the 231st Brigade, the brigade commander visited Southampton docks before D-Day and spoke to the men on the infantry landing ships HMS Glenroy, Empire Spearhead, Empire Crossbow, Empire Arquebus, to wish them Godspeed. Meanwhile, along the coastline of northern France, Allied minesweepers prepared safe channels for the Armada. During the final approach, the greatest threat came from the Americans, who managed to ease a number of points off their course and threatened to jockey the convoy out of their swept channel. But Commander Wheeler refused to be bounced, and after a brisk nautical exchange, the US Navy ships were obliged to sheer off. The Hampshires left their camp at Beaulieu in the New Forest on the 31st of May and spent the 3rd to the 5th of June at sea awaiting their final orders. The ships were to reach their release position off the coast of France at about 5:25 a.m. and under the cover of the tail end of the naval and air bombardment, the assault landing craft were lowered into the water to get away from the LSIs and make for the shore. The 50th Northumbrian Division was to go in on the right of the 3rd of the 3 assault divisions of the 2nd Army, with 69 and 231st as the 2 assault brigades. The 231st Brigade was to land 2 assaulting battalions on Jig Green Beach, the 1st Dorsets on the left and the 1st Hampshires on the right. The battalion were actually put ashore slightly to the east of the appointed place. By virtue of the tide, both the Hampshires and Dorsetshires claimed to be the first British troops to land on D-Day. Artist Gross landed at Goldbeach with the 50th Division, and while waiting his turn to land, he made pencil sketches of troops disembarking on the beaches. From his picture you can see the troops in the foreground capturing a pillbox, and in the distance a converted sanatorium. In peacetime, the coastal town was popular for patients recovering from tuberculosis, so there were many such buildings along the seafront. These buildings appeared ordinary, but the ground floor was filled with concrete to form an excellent strong point or blockhouse from which to defend the beaches. When the first wave of infantry arrived at 7:25, they immediately came under fire from the casemated 75mm gun at Le Hamel, with the narrowness of the beach and presence of mines adding to their difficulties. The tide came in before many of the beach obstacles and mines were cleared, and some of the landing craft got bogged down on the beach or were taken out by enemy fire. The DD tanks and Royal Marine Centaur tanks that were supposed to arrive in advance of the landing were delayed by rough seas. 2 companies of the Hampshires landed very close to the strong point at Le Hamel and had no option but to fight inland through enemy garrisons to get off the beach. Despite close support from landing craft gun and landing craft flak and destroyers, Le Hamel was proving a very tough nut to crack. On its eastern side, the large gun emplacement firing across Jig Beach had been seemingly silenced a number of times, but kept coming to life. The nearby sanatorium complex was also providing a hotbed of resistance. There were a number of other concealed machine gun positions and tobrukes built into the sea wall. The 1st Hampshires were taking more and more casualties, and clearly there were more Germans here than expected, and of a very different fighting quality than some of the coastal units defending King Beach. The influence of the German 352nd Infantry Division was easily seen in Le Hamel. A plan was made in the early afternoon for B Company to give fire support to C Company as they established themselves within Le Hamel East and bring them within 250 yards of the sanatorium position. C Company started its advance at 13:45, but it took an hour of difficult fighting to attain dominance in the area. B Company now moved up to about 50 yards from the sanatorium in order to put in a final attack, but was held up by heavy fire. Luckily, at the same time, an AVRE from Assault Breaching Team 2 managed to find its way from the beach. When it fired a dustbin bomb at the sanatorium, a huge amount of smoke and dust erupted, but German fire was only temporarily disrupted. 5 further bombs caused considerable damage, and the 1st Hampshires were able to get inside and mop up any remaining resistance. Sherwood Ranger Yeomanry tanks supported the AVRE with machine gun and 75mm rounds. The AVR then moved to the rear of the large concrete position, WN-37, that had caused so many problems on Jig Beach. 1 round into the back of the bunker finally brought to an end German resistance there. Over 30 prisoners were taken in these 2 actions, and Le Hamel East was finally in the hands of the 1st Hampshires, but the protracted and deadly German resistance meant that it took till around 1700 hours. Part of the problem had been that, as well as the early bombing falling 3,000 yards away from the target, and strong point WN-37 in particular being well protected from the naval gunfire on its seaward flank, the casualties amongst the 1st Hampshire's officers and the close nature of the fighting meant that radio contact with naval bombardment forces could not be effectively exploited. 1st Hampshire C Company was now able to advance more easily through Le Hamel to take the 50mm gun position strong point WN-38 at the west end of the village. Even so, the Germans in the area fought back, and Sergeant Scaife's AVRE was put to further use, bombarding fortified houses, and a further 20 prisoners were taken. Meanwhile, D Company of the 1st Hampshires had advanced around Le Hamel and moved to attack the strong point WN-39, described as a half-troop position in reports. This comprised a 75mm gun and an 88mm gun in separate concrete bunkers wired in with minefields fronting them. Both guns were sighted in front of Le Hamel and could also engage craft to the east of the position up to 3,000 yards away. Gunboat Flores had engaged the battery at 0630, and it was engaged again by the destroyers HMS Undine, HMS Cottesmore and HMS Catastop at various times during the morning when the position was observed firing on the beaches. The guns at WN-39 were 2 of the most effective on D-Day, firing between them over 150 rounds. Investigation after D-Day showed that again the early bombing had missed. D Company was able to capture both WN-39 and continue to take the radar station on top of the cliffs relatively easily. However, the war diary reports enemy 88mm guns and Spandau teams put up a determined resistance. At any rate, after Le Hamel seemed under control, B and C companies joined D Company at the radar station, and the move into Arromanches itself was organised. Some of the battalion support company Brent carriers had arrived, and several AVREs seemed available. D Company had taken about 40 prisoners, some coming up from Arromanches under a white flag. A bombardment on the battery beyond Arromanches by naval vessels and 147 Field Regiment was arranged, and D Company advanced to the south and rear of the town to take this objective. Major Mott then descended into Arromanches with C Company, and he reports little opposition, and that Arromanches was full of French people. Flowers came out, and tricolours and Union Jacks. I had been told that all coastal inhabitants had been moved inland, but these were delighted to see us. The right flank of the Gold Beach landing was now securely held. Brigadier Stanhier came up and congratulated the men for a magnificent show. The 1st Hampshire suffered 182 casualties in the single day, but remained operational. There was a feeling on D-Day that because of the casualties and the length of time to achieve their objectives, the Hampshire Regiment would be criticised. In reality, they showed tremendous courage and discipline in the face of difficult circumstances. According to the regimental history for D-Day, every Hampshire man knew the importance of the task that was given to the battalion and never hesitated. They understood the honour as the spearhead of the attack and the first British troops ashore and rose to the challenge.